All right. All right, there, folks. I'm live. I'm expecting one other person to potentially jump on whenever he gets a chance because I was trying to get a bunch of stuff put together at the same time and do a couple things before going live. But we're again just random talking. And what's up to J Biggs for being the first one in the chat? Man just jumped on first. I'm here first. Plus Ultra, man. I'm here first. Uh, uh, but everything's good here. Just going to whatever topic pops into my brain is whatever I'm talking about, or whatever happens is what I'm talking about. We're going to let the intrusive thoughts and the sidetracking just roll with this one. What do you speak for me now? Yeah, like you just speak for me now. Hmm? You get to throw your opinion in. Oh, so you abandoning me? Okay, fine. Oh man. Um, but I would have done this last night, but kids were not feeling all that great, and they were seeming to not be in the best of moods, and dealing with them with yelling and screaming and trying to live stream at the same time would not have been the most optimal thing. So I would have done this following the presentation, well, not presentation, but the premiere for the Cross Zone episode that posted last night. But again, kids not feeling well, it wouldn't have done so great. And now they're up running around like nothing in the world ever happened and that they weren't sick. So now is the most optimal time to do it, unless they get into a bunch of stuff, which they like to do when I'm sitting stationary for a while. But how are you all folks doing? And quick question for anybody in the chat that wants to run it. What would be a crossover you'd like to see? You know what? Yeah. What would be a crossover you'd like to see? Because I can go ahead and we could talk about that like right now if my kids don't get themselves into trouble. So what and it doesn't necessarily have to be a video game, but like what crossover would you like to see? Like that you think would be interesting? Because to me, I'm open to ideas. I already know what I'm working on for the next one. Uh, like I said in the video, I'd already started scripting it, so I know exactly what I'm. I know not exactly what it's going to be like once it's finished, but I know exactly where it's going. I know the mindset I have for it. So I'll give the chat a chance to say something. For the five of you that are watching, thank you for watching, by the way. But what crossover would you like to see happen? I mean, I've got tons of them I can rattle off. And I've done several times before already. Talked about several of them, especially if you watch the Winging It podcast, you know for a fact that I just throw them out at random sometimes. Um, so I'm not seeing a response yet. Oh, like just as I say, I'm not seeing a response. And J Biggs goes ahead and throws down Life Force and Actually, that wouldn't be a bad combo because you fight aliens anyway. Um, Oh, I already sent you the link. Check your Twitter. I already sent you the link. Or it should be sent. Yeah, it should be there. But Contra and Life Force, yeah, that's actually an interesting concept. That because you're fighting space aliens anyway. So basically, the Contra side of it is all the ground uh, fighting and stuff. Maybe some of the stuff where you're on like little land vehicles. Give me 1 second. All right, and I'm back, and I'll go ahead and add in Gilligan real quick. There we go.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Excellent. Well, thankfully that as far as I can tell, I don't have anything to fully distract me anymore. So I can be around as long as you're willing to.
Hey, that's fine. Right now, I asked for the chat to just throw out whatever crossover ideas they came up with, and Jay Biggs hit a good one with Life Force and Contra.
Oh, speaking of crossover, I think I might have told you about this before, Andre. Um, but there was this one crossover that I wanted to see throughout the entirety of my life, but unfortunately, I don't think that's ever going to happen anytime soon. And that is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Spider Man.
Oh, that'd be
Like,
that. I've actually thought about that myself. That would be a good combo, especially because of Peter liking to joke all the time and see him and Michelangelo get to it and irritate the hell out of Raphael.
yeah, yeah,
That would actually
and
be interesting.
yeah. I mean, seriously, like, you know, they're both, from New York. They both involve like mutants and stuff in a sense, or
Well, in Spider-Man sense mutates, but similar concept.
mutation. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, like, eh, and it's like we're seeing like TNT crossover with like a lot of franchises, especially with Batman and stuff, and I
Yeah.
think Power Rangers at one point in time.
They've so far they've done Savage Dragon, they've done Power Rangers, they've done Batman. There were a few other ones that they did, minor ones if I remember correctly. I think they did a couple Image comic crossovers. I just don't remember exactly which ones. I'd have to look them all up. But it'd be interesting to see that happen. Crossing over Spider-Man with Ninja Turtles actually just start crossing over with everything. I'd see Ninja Turtles crossing over with the X-Men. We could see them crossing over with the Avengers. Let them cross over with JLA proper. Just let them cross over with everybody. Let them be the link to
Yeah,
everyone. That would actually be pretty cool.
yeah.
And technically they
I
already did cross over with JLA being put in why am I having
J
such a hard time remembering the name?
JLA.
Well,
Is that
not
like a
JL. No, the game. I'm thinking of the game. Because it's DC Comics. It's like if the ruin. If Bet, I know the world. Superman kills the Joker because Joker tricks him into killing Lois Lane while she's pregnant. Injustice. That's
Injustice.
what it was.
Injustice. Yeah.
I don't know why that escaped it, but they technically crossed over with JLA being in Injustice.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. That was true. The second game, actually, to be exact.
Yeah,
That's where they
because
crossed over.
that's where DC had the chance to be able to use. Well, Warner Brothers had the chance to be able to use them. But I would
And
love to see them cross over with a bunch of different stuff. This, especially since the technology in their different universes allows them to cross over with different versions of themselves as well as different other continuities. Actually, Ben 10 crossing over with the Ninja Turtles would be pretty cool too.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Especially if
absolutely.
it's classic Ben. I don't really know much about the newer version, but if it's classic Ben, I'd definitely watch it.
Well, the latest Ben 10, I didn't hear any good things about,
I, I
but
I haven't checked into it, so I have no clue. I'm not
right.
going to judge it based off of not knowing anything about it, but I do know if it's classic Ben, especially once it gets older, because that version of Ben 10 is a lot more like Peter
Mm,
Parker anyway. So it'd be essentially the same thing, just with someone that has multiple different power sets.
yeah,
Well, yeah, Jay Biggs, Battletoads. I definitely want to see that one, but not the new Battletoads. It's got to be the older version of Battletoads. Can't be
yeah.
the one that was created for Xbox recently. Why are you
Yeah,
that little girl?
yeah, yeah. I remember playing the Battletoads reboot on the Xbox, and
Gameplay is
it's
fine, but everything else about that game is just garbage.
I'm not. Here's the thing. Like, I think my biggest problem with the Battletoads reboot is that, like, besides like the turning it into like this sort of like a game that's sort
Saturday.
of like low key. It's like, I mean, having it being like a Saturday morning cartoon, I think it's fitting. But I think like the way how they treat it, I think what I think it reminds me of. Like, it reminds me of Teen Titans Go. They kind of low key
Ugh.
Teen Titans Go-ified the
Well, yeah.
Battletoads.
But
So
the
that's what I'm
problem the
talking about.
problem with that is that Battletoads was never really made for a child audience. It was always more adult. So when you strip it down from what it was, you kind of turn it into something else. Now, if they wanted to do a kids version of Battletoads, that's fine, but then you'd have to cut down on the violence, which they didn't do. So it's like, what were you trying to accomplish?
Well, it is those strange times where like you got these really adult like movies like RoboCop, um, Alien even have like toys made for children or even TV shows made for kids. Like there was a RoboCop TV show that I
Yeah.
used to remember watching like trailers of at the
Oh yeah.
time. You know,
But when they did that, though, when they made those toys, they weren't.
Hmm.
I could say, especially during like the late '80s, early '90s, because I remember having a lot of that stuff. But those toys and even the cartoons that spawned from them didn't depict the violence the same way that their movie counterparts did. That's the
that's true.
problem. With Battletoads, the violence was the same, but they took away like almost all of the intelligence. So it's like the things that made Battletoads interesting were stripped from it. And yeah, the gameplay was good, as well as I'm not even going to say the artwork was bad. The artwork was good. The gameplay and the artwork were good, but they stripped the essence of what Battletoads is away from it. And that is probably what bugs me the most.
Right. Um, I think having it being again having it be a more appealing for a wider audience is not inherently a bad thing, especially considering how they're usually compared to the Ninja Turtles. Where not sure if you remember, but the Ninja Turtles did start off as a more adult comic series at one
Oh yeah,
point in
I
time
remember. And
before.
yes, the campy cartoon happened, but they still didn't remove what made the Ninja Turtles the Turtles. They all still had their individual personalities. They were still separate characters to themselves. They weren't like well, I
Right.
guess you could say they were hyperimposed versions of themselves because they had to be on daytime television, but it made
Right.
sense the
Yeah.
way it was done. With Battletoads, it didn't feel Turtles, it felt okay, especially because they introduced a lot of new elements that made it interesting. Where Battletoads, they didn't really introduce anything new to it. They just took everything that made it good and said, forget all that ever happened. All that stuff was fake. This is the real story. And this
Oh
story sucks.
yeah. Yeah. It's that kind of again
They
it's
really parried. They really, like, you hit it on the head when you said they did Teen Titans Go, and Jay Biggs agrees. They parodied it. They made a self parody.
yeah, yeah,
But for
yeah.
people who are longtime fans like myself, you took away what made it good. The only character that made any sense to me throughout that whole game was Pimple. Pimple was the only
Yeah.
character that made any sense to me. And that's because he was the only one that made any sense. Like,
Yeah.
he was Zitz was an arrogant airhead. Rash was just needlessly stupid. Like, it didn't make any sense to make him that dumb. And Pimple had logic and reasoning, but he was overshadowed by the stupidity of all the other characters. They even turned the Dark Queen, who's supposed to be hyper intelligent, extremely powerful, and has a great command of her soldiers, she was reduced down to nothing. She
Yeah,
was
that's
reduced
what I
basically to
remember.
nothing. So it was like, what was the point? Like,
Yeah, yeah. Like I think that's like the biggest problem is how they handled it, like how they handled it. And honestly, in terms of the whole self-parody thing, we already got like sort of a movie equivalent to that, and that is the Chip and Dale movie that
yeah,
came out like a couple of years ago for Disney
yes,
Plus.
and it was great. That movie hit all the notes it needed to hit, and it made sense because they didn't just do it in a way that just was off putting. You like with Battletoads, you get that first level, and the first level seems that's about the only level I liked in that whole game was that first level because it still felt like OG Battletoads, and then they just like nope, bye out the window.
Oh yeah, I that's like I really wanted to get into the other biggest problem, and I think one of the I think it's even more arguably more offensive than the way how they're portrayed is the how they enforce like these gimmicky like levels
The
and
mini games,
gameplay styles. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that and then having three different buttons that essentially do the same thing. It's like
Oh
why not
yeah.
just consolidate all of these to one button? One button could have done all of these functions, and just add in a targeting system when you had to target objects. Why make it separate buttons? Like,
Like
they,
the Battletoads as a game series at its core is a beat 'em up. You know,
yeah.
it shouldn't be incorporating like all these gimmicky
Well,
minigame esque elements into
technically, Battletoads did that, but it was when they did the mini games. The mini games kind of gave you an idea of what was coming next, like Battletoads and Battle Maniacs. Before you do the section with the bikes, you're on the little domino thing. Well, not domino, but the thing with the chess pieces, the chessboard. You're on the chessboard going up and down the thing at a much slower pace that gives you the concept for the next thing. And
ah.
that's what and it's like when they did it with the new game, they really didn't have a direction. It's just like whatever we're doing at whatever time is whatever's coming. So that was the big problem.
Yeah. Like to be honest, like I kind of feel a little bit bad for the devs behind Battletoads because apparently those are the same devs that also worked on the Disney Illusion Island game, the newest one that came
Mhm.
out last year.
Yeah. I mean,
And
they got shoehorned into doing something they probably didn't want to do. That's kind of how I look at it.
yeah, yeah. And the thing is, like you said earlier, like the art style is pretty good, you know. And the same implies with the Disney Illusion Island game as well. But unfortunately, when I played Disney Illusion Island, right, I I was like legitimately disappointed because like the biggest problem with that game is that they it's just mostly like just basic platforming in a Metroidvania world. Like like the idea of like a legit like a combination of like say a 2D Mario and a Metroidvania, you know, sounds like a great idea. But as like the problem is like you know you don't necessarily attack or anything. There's hardly that much like type of combat in itself. You
Mm-hmm.
know, unlike the other Disney Illusion games, you know, starring Mickey Mouse, and it just gets really boring. I remember like I was playing with a good friend of mine, who was from a gaming group. Like we played it for a good while. We were like really was like trying to find anything that is remotely interesting happening, and hardly any of it really has happened. And it and I don't think it didn't get anything remotely interesting until much later into the game, and even then I was just like already just fed up with it. Like
It took
I
too
just
long to get to a good point.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
the same problem Mass Effect Andromeda had. It took too long for the game to finally get good.
yeah. And even then, it's like it's not that much better either. Like when it actually gets somewhat interesting, it doesn't really get that much better per se, you know. And what's so unfortunate too is like it does kind of give me like Rayman Legends vibes, you know, like one of my all-time favorite 2D platformers. And the fact that it's just like a very sluggish, very toned down version of that, plus like a Metroidvania, uh, like here's the thing, I'm not against Metroidvanias, you know, especially the series that started that genre, you know, Metroid Indivania. Um, but like if Disney was an island, like yeah, I get it. It's mainly for kids, I guess, but they could have add a little bit some spice to it to make it more entertaining. I'm not saying to make it Dark Souls hard or anything, but have some a little bit of variety, which unfortunately that's what the game was like sorely lacking. Like and the unlockables that you get is just basic like abilities or basic stuff that honestly should have been unlocked from day one. All you do when you start the game is just run and jump, and then you had to traverse around to unlock some stuff like a ground pound or swing or the ability to swim. Like it's. Uh, I
It
wasn't
got
having
lost.
it.
It basically got lost in the concept and didn't really execute well. That's what it
Yeah.
sounds like to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Yeah.
was basically the problem with Battletoads game. It got lost in the idea of the concept, but it didn't execute well. And then when you add all that other stuff in there, it just you add the other problems to it. It's not as fun as it could have been. And then the hard
Yeah.
mode for that game was like pointless because all it did was up the enemy's stamina to the point where you could barely damage them. That's it. It didn't do anything else. So it was basically airing with frustration. And I think I got like halfway through that game and then stopped. I was like, I'm not going to put myself through any more of this torture. I'm not playing this anymore. I'm done. No more. You lost me. I'm not continuing. And the bad thing
I'm
is they
glad.
could have gone so many different directions.
Yeah, I agree. Like for me, I'm glad I played it on Game Pass at one point.
Oh, that's exactly
Yeah.
what I did. Because I was thinking about
Mm.
buying it, but I wasn't going to buy it until I tried it because I was iffy anyway because of such a drastic style change up. But once
Mm-hmm.
I got the plan, I was like, it eventually just completely lost me at that point. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to continue. No point.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
I'm
anyways,
looking at some of Jay Big's comments. Oh yeah, I
oh,
agree with this one right here. The 1985 Thundercats to the late 2020 Thunder.
oh
Yeah,
God,
yeah,
Thundercats
because
roar,
yeah,
Thundercats roar. Oh my God.
which is
Oh,
which is horrible because when you think about the anime that came out back in the mid 2010s was way better, and that
that's what I
changed the
heard.
whole
Yeah.
story. That changed the whole story of Thundercats, but it did so in a way that could line up with the lore of the old show. So I'm like, man, but the Thundercats roar thing, and then they got mad at the fans for talking about it. I was like, ain't no way you get mad at the fans for showing that they feel aggrieved because you took something that was beloved to them and then crapped all over
Oh God. And it led to, funny enough, they it led to one of the many Teen Titans Go crossovers, and it's arguably agreed upon it is the worst one yet, because not only that it's
Mm,
just so bad, but they also completely insult the fans, even by extension, even insulting an actor who passed away not so long ago. I think he did the voice of this Panther character in
Panthro.
Thundercats. Panther, yeah. Like
Yeah,
they had this skull. They had this character's skull on the side of a cave at one point when you have the '80s Lionels are saying their opinions are invalid and they have poopy uh opinions like
which
that.
was
That kind of
pointless. Like you can't be agitated at the fans for noticing that you are doing dirty with something that they highly enjoyed. Like you can't be mad at them for that. That just doesn't make any sense to be agitated at them for looking at what you've done and saying, no, I don't like this. Just like with me, and people probably wouldn't realize it, but Powerpuff Girls. I used to watch that with my nieces when they were growing up.
the
The old
the 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 old one, right?
The old
Not the
Powerpuff
2016
Girls,
reboot.
yeah, to the 2016 one. The 2016 one makes little to no sense, and it's not as horrible or as egregious as Thundercats Roar. But then you get it like they just stacked powers on the characters for no reason. The original series, there was progression for the characters. This season, they got Green Lantern powers. I'm like, why? Why do they all and then you just stack them on top of them? Like it doesn't make any sense for them to just keep getting powers out of the blue. They didn't
Oh,
build up and gain them, they just had them.
oh, and don't get me started on some of the more egregious aspects. Like they made the girls do like really ugly faces, which that wasn't even the. It wasn't even like that in the original show. And then there's this one infamous scene where they were hypnotized and they were twerking with this panda villain.
Yeah, I
Like,
remember that. And I was like, who is this for? Like, why are you trying to tell kids to go twerking with adults? Think that was what I got from that. You're telling kids they need to go start twerking with an adult that they like. Why? Why are you telling children to do this?
it's funny because one of the people that worked on that show was apparently a sex offender.
Well,
Who
now it makes
also who also made her own show called 12 Forever, which also had underlying creepy themes onto it
uh,
too.
now it makes more sense because people like that get in those positions because they got some sort of connection, and that person says, "Oh yeah, green light, go and take this franchise that your name doesn't belong on and do what you want to do with it."
Yeah. Oh man. And speaking of creators, like writers and producers versus the fans, like there's a lot of people out there who would just straight up trying to insult the fandom in one way or another. Like they're like, oh, I don't owe you or anything like that, but like at the same time, like I get it because fandoms can be unforgiving and very toxic. We would definitely would know. Right? We have been there before, but you know, like they're like now. Granted, like again, like I mentioned about how like toxic fandoms can be. Like they will actually go ahead and attack um legit like you know docs or attack like actors and writers, or
Oh yeah,
people
we
in
definitely
general.
we disown those people. We
Yeah,
do not claim them, even though we know that they are part of like every fandom.
yeah,
But
yeah.
that doesn't give the showrunners the right to go ahead and crap on everyone else.
Exactly. Yeah, like even they will even like go against those who are rightfully just straight up criticizing their work.
Yeah.
And just call them nerdy man baby children or whatever. Like, ugh,
You're
it's
for someone to criticize your work and tell you that you are doing a poor job at your job is them looking at what you're supposed to do, looking at what you're, especially if you are working from something that is established. Again, Powerpuff Girls was an example. Working from OG Powerpuff Girls, or even if you want to look at the anime Powerpuff Girls Z, both of those respect the IP. The more recent one doesn't do such a good job of that. And they put the characters in situations that you would not expect to actually see them in, which a
mm-hmm.
lot of it's weird and a lot of it's thoughtless. And hey, Dark Void wasn't trying to ignore you, but it's like sitting down and saying, well, I can do because I have the rights to do with this IP whatever I can do. I was told I can do whatever I want to. I'm going to do whatever I want to. But that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
always work. If something is established to be a different way, or people say, well, it's an alternate universe. Okay, it's an alternate universe, but it's still based upon the same thing. So there has to be some consistency somewhere other than the names of the characters.
Saying that it's an alternate universe doesn't give it an excuse to not criticize it.
Yeah, that's just like with people in Castlevania Nocturne. And it irritated me because, and I still think about this because there was somebody who said that that was a side story to the original, to the game story. It's like, no, it's not a side story to the game story. It's not the same thing as a side story. Now, what you're trying to say is that it's a separate continuity, which is true. That is a separate continuity, but that doesn't. It's not tied to the original source material that closely. The only thing that remains the same about that is that they have a lot of the same character names and some of the likenesses, but so much stuff was changed without purpose, and going through it and then realizing that they disrespect the main character. Like, why would you disrespect the main character in a show that's supposed to be serious about this particular family taking on Dracula or vampires? So why would you then disrespect the main character to a fandom that loves this character?
Oh, a lot of showrunners tend to do that nowadays, especially in movies. They like to take like these beloved, like iconic main characters, and just absolutely bastardize them.
For
You
no reason
know,
other than, hey, I want to make my mark. Make your mark without without destroying or disrespecting material.
it's like it's like most of these writers and showrunners nowadays, like it just feels like they seem to be ashamed on the IPs that they're working on for the most part. This is even the same goes for video games as well.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
yeah. But my thing is, if you feel that way about what you're working on, why work on it? Why not work on something different? Or at least, if you're going to work on a thing, work within what makes that thing good and build up your reputation, and then go create your own stuff that you can do what you want to do with. That makes
see,
more sense.
that's the thing. It makes sense. That's the problem. It makes sense. Like these corporations nowadays, like they don't want to make sense. They don't want to they just want to find like a cheaper way out to you know to to get things done. That's why like these companies are so hell bent on using like generative like AI on everything else and wanted to get rid of the writers, in general. Like and while you can make the argument that because the writers nowadays are just bad and stuff. Yeah, sure, I can make the argument for that. You could that's a good point. But
Mhm.
this also may potentially like, you know, not give any potential people out there who are like who do understand the source material much more so than anyone else could, even a damn robot, you know, and basically do it, you know, make the series like just as good as it was before, you know, and
Mm,
that's like the terrifying concept about you know AI in general. Like AI should be used as a tool to improve your work in a sense, but not to replace people. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, that's what it's supposed to be, but you always got somebody trying to take the easier way out.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And if they can take the easy way out, then they can avoid blame. That's kind of how
Yep.
it works.
Yeah. Yep. That's that you hit the nail on the head on that one too. I think that's another reason why that's another reason why these companies are so hell bent on trying to replace people with AI. So they don't get any scrutiny um from anyone else, because it's like, oh, yes, this is made by machines and robots. It's like there's less hassle in their hands, and yeah, but not knowing that they're still getting scrutinized anyways for it. You know.
Well, I will definitely be one of the ones scrutinizing it, especially when we have AI now stealing videos on YouTube and stealing people's scripts and horribly
Oh
messing
yeah.
up wording and everything. I'm like, man, this is we are literally living with Skynet right now, and Skynet is at its dumbest phase. When it's smart, we're screwed. We're screwed when it's smart.
Oh
But
yeah.
that's to avoid conspiracy theories. I'm not saying it in the sense to be like, oh, scare everybody. I'm just saying it in the sense that people are going to start losing jobs and stuff, and being a
Mm-hmm.
creative is going to end up being looked down upon, which is
Yeah.
sad because all AI can do is work with the information that we create. It doesn't make new information. It works with whatever we've created.
Mm-hmm. And these AI bros and defenders out there are just like, trying to play it cool, and they're even like doing like a campaign against actual artists. Like, geez, like with the hashtag break the pencil and shit. And just like they're trying to like victimize themselves, like they're the victims here.
Oh yeah,
You know.
yeah, definitely. Because there was like that guy that got upset at an artist that wouldn't do his commission, and then said, "Well, I could just go get AI to do it." Well, okay, you could have just got the AI to do it because you don't want to pay the guy's rate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that
Yep.
person knows how much time they have to spend to do the work that you want done. So don't get angry at them for telling you a price that makes things livable for them. That's the
Mm-hmm.
whole point. If you're going to somebody who has a specialized skill, you should pay them appropriately for the specialized skill. That's it.
Yeah. Exactly.
And if you can't afford that, then just say you can't afford it. But you don't get angry at them for needing a certain type of payment. Or hey, maybe work something out with them, because there's some artists are reasonable. They'll let you work out payment scheduling with them instead of paying everything all at once.
I know an artist that does that actually,
There are
and
plenty that do. The problem is people don't want to be respectful, but there are plenty of artists that do.
yeah. But anyways, I do have a topic to talk about. Since we're on mostly like random thoughts and ideas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the next topic I definitely want to bring up is this leads to like another Nintendo controversy that's been going on, and that is
Are you
the
talking
whole
about the Gary's Mod stuff?
yeah, the Gmod stuff, yeah. And I have a few things to say about that. So apparently there's a few people out there are saying that it's not really Nintendo, and and it's someone else who is portraying as Nintendo, which has happened before once upon a time. Like what happened with the Kirby Reanimated project.
Yeah.
And but apparently, according to the creator of Gmod himself, he said that apparently it is from Nintendo, right?
Mm.
But I do have a bit of a doubt on that as well, because there is a possibility that he still might be taking these emails at face value and not really double checking on on researching those emails. But let's say, like, if Nintendo really did send a cease and desist about the Gmod stuff, right? Um, for those who are just are crying about, like, um saying that, oh, we're now gonna pirate and be outraged and stuff, like I'm gonna say this right now, and there's even actually, oh man, so okay, so apparently, like, some even argue that Nintendo needs to be in another, like, Wii U situation so they can be humbled, and this is what I'm gonna say: no amount of pirating, outrage, or hell, even downward spiral sales on Nintendo is gonna humble them on changing their minds. Because I think one of the greatest examples of that would be the Wii U era.
Mm.
This is where Nintendo was doing the cease and desisting at the time during the Wii U era. You know, the era that people were trying to play revisionist history. That, oh, everything's all hunky dory and stuff. Even though in reality it was like one of the worst times to be a Nintendo fan.
Yeah.
Like, need I ever remind you that Iwata died during that era? So there's more of a reason that the Wii U era and the 3DS era wasn't a good era. Here's that example. Like, I think, like I said, like the whole, like, copyright claiming, cease and desisting, especially on YouTube at the time. And then they introduced that terrible partners program where YouTubers were just being paid pennies to for their content at one point in time, until they changed that around, like, I don't know, it was like 2018. I think it was like late 2018 actually. Um, that they completely changed that for the better, for the most part. But it's better off now than what it is back then. But yeah, like, Nintendo could be, like, on the verge of bankruptcy, and there will still be cease and desisting to hell and back. you know, like,
Yeah.
Nintendo is notoriously stuck in their own ways, for better or for worse. You know,
I mean,
so that's what I think.
people getting upset over the if I'm still iffy on it myself, even though Gary has basically said that is his it is Nintendo. He believes it to be them. Either way, whether people like it or not, they have the choice to decide, hey, we don't want this stuff to be done with our IP. And who's to say that they even paid enough attention to know it existed before? Or maybe the legal team that's representing them just stumbled onto it. One way or the other, they still have the right to say, we don't want our stuff used that way. And I keep saying it, and it's hard for people to understand. But if you create something and someone takes it without paying you for the rights, or without getting permission from you for the rights to use that thing, that you have every right to go ahead and say, hey, don't do that. That is as simple as that. You have the right to say it. Now, not everyone does, because some creators or some companies are more flexible. But you can't expect
Like Sega, for
everyone.
example.
Yeah, you can't expect everyone to be that flexible. And Sega has been flexible and inflexible off and on, because a
Oh
lot of people
yeah.
forgot about that whole thing with Shining Force, where they like whole slate wiped a bunch of people's stuff off YouTube for Shining Force so that they could unveil the new game. They literally
Oh yeah.
took a bunch of people's stuff down. Or what they did with Streets of Rage remake, even though Bomber Link was kind of constantly trying to contact them to say, "Hey, look, I'm doing this thing. Would you give me permission to, or do you want me to stop?" And they took forever to get to respond about it, and then they just finally told them to cease and desist. So it
That's
depends
crazy.
on what we're talking about. Because yes, when it comes down to Sonic, Sega almost cares less because Sega themselves have not done that great with Sonic up until very recently. Because they had
Hmm.
a string of time where Sonic was looked at as bottom of the barrel. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
at this point, yeah, Sega's like, yeah, we're not going to mind so much if it's Sonic. We're going to be okay if it's Sonic.
Right.
But other stuff they tend to not want to let you use. So it again just depends on what we're talking about, what thing we're talking about. With Nintendo, if you go with any of their flagship stuff, they are definitely going to be like, no, you can't use that. They've always been,
Right.
unless they either one don't know about it, or two, it literally doesn't cause them any harm. And again, that's an iffy situation. It's going to be one or the other, and yeah, we don't all have to agree with them every time they do it, but at the same time, we
Yeah. Exactly.
can't be mad that they did do it. Now, like if I were to,
I'm just numb through the whole thing because I'm expecting. I know how Nintendo is, but I would argue that even Nintendo can be inconsistent at times. And
yeah,
there is a good example I want to bring up is that is the whole these fan song remixes, right?
oh yeah,
I'm not sure you heard, but not too long ago there was this Metroid YouTuber channel who has done like Metroid fan remixes before. Apparently, they allegedly got a cease and desist from Nintendo over that, and it did worry me at the time because I was like, does this mean like YouTube channels like GA Metal, Note Block, and the copious amount of like Pokemon fan song remixers out there are just gonna be getting copyright claimed and stuff.
I
But apparently that didn't happen.
yeah, with that one, I did think that because I know what you're talking about. I remember because I was checking that dude's channel out when it was up. I remember that going down. I was like, this doesn't make sense because it's if they're going to do it, they're not going to look at just the one person and tell them to stop. They're going to look at everything else that's out there. So, like, unless you did something specific, it
Hmm.
doesn't make sense that they would just take you down, or maybe somebody was spoofing. And even with Gmod, it could still potentially be somebody spoofing the law firm for Nintendo. People forget that you don't necessarily have to be able to utilize a web address in order to spoof it. All you have to
Yeah.
know is the web address or the email address that you want to spoof and set up something that can forward whatever gets sent through whatever links you provide to you. You don't directly have to actually use the thing that you're spoofing. Because I've had plenty of stuff in my email address that sounds like it's coming from a legit company. And then I started to look at the metadata and realize, oh nah, somebody's faking.
Yeah.
I'm like
But
it avoided a bunch of identity fraud crap. So
even then too, like with how advanced AI is going, that they could probably fake that. They can hide that shit like
yeah,
super easily to even trick even the most steely eyed of individuals. Like
yeah,
there's an
be
opportunity.
careful.
I honestly want. I actually low key want people to like to quote unquote poke the proverbial nest and just upload like Gmod videos of the Nintendo characters and stuff to see like to see if they are going to receive that cease and desist or not, and if it actually is from Nintendo. Because if it's just like all these other Gma videos that had Nintendo content on it, you
Mhm.
know, let's say like SNG4 or stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Um, like just do keep on making those parody videos and stuff, and just whatever, you know, just keep trying it until if they ever receive anything, and if you haven't received any more further emails from Nintendo or anything else from those other channels, then that's a good possibility that it's either a just a really a really weird inconsistent thing that Nintendo's doing, or it's just someone pretending to be Nintendo.
Yeah.
And I feel like that might be a thing with the whole fan song remixes as well. You know, what if that wasn't really from Nintendo? You know,
I mean, there's a
but
chance it wasn't.
yeah, so that's why I'm not
There's
gonna
a
like,
strong chance it wasn't. And go ahead.
yeah, like I was saying, like there's a possibility that this may not be a Nintendo. Not trying to outright saying in denying the whole thing outright, but there has the things that Nintendo is very consistent on is taking down of fan games, um, taking down ROMs and emulators. For the most part, ROM sites and stuff. They've been always been consistent on that one for the most part. You know, they have always been consistent on that one. So we know it's I was obviously Nintendo that's doing that stuff, especially when it comes to the fan game stuff. But
Yeah.
when it comes to like Gmod stuff and fan song remixes, and oh god, like there's even apparently they people has apparently even accused like Nintendo of even taking down like not safe for work artwork of Nintendo characters as well, which even that is very inconsistent as well, because there's like tons of not safe for work content involving Nintendo
It,
characters
it's
all the
it's near
time.
impossible. It's near impossible to take it all down. But that I could actually believe more likely would be Nintendo because they present as family friendly and certain characters fit in certain categories. So that I could see more. And even with fan games, the fan games and ROM hacks usually when they do that, it's because whatever's coming out at the time is competing with something that they're doing. Like
Right.
the Super Mario when they had the website that was up that allowed you to make your own custom Super Mario levels based on the original Super Mario engine. They were working on Super Mario Maker, so they took it down. Then
Right.
AM2R got taken down, but they were already working on Samus Returns. So it makes sense
Yeah.
when they take something down, or a Pokemon game, a Pokemon fan game. I think it was Uranium or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
They took
Yeah.
that down because
Those.
they had Pokemon coming out. And it's like the time frame of when what you released coming out interferes with what they're working on, or what you took is blatantly what they already have, and they're saying no, we don't want you to put that out as something that competes with what we already have out.
Mm-hmm.
So it
Yeah.
they're inconsistent on that a little bit, but it seems to be that there's a certain set of rules to how they go about it. Uh,
Yeah.
Gwen
Which.
Evans, yes, somebody really would do that. Go on the internet and tell lies. Yes, yes, yes. They would.
Yeah.
They would
It's that.
definitely do that.
It's that Buster meme from Arthur. When Buster told Arthur, you really think that you honestly think that people will tell lies on the internet? It's like, oh yeah.
I mean, people tell lies in real life. Like what? All the internet is an extension of real life. So why wouldn't they tell lies there too?
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. And like going back to like the Sega and how they handle their copyright IPs, especially with Sonic, right? Like it's like everyone always seems to bring up of the fact that everyone always brings up like Christian Whitehead and how he was a Sonic fan and Sega and he was like making some fan games of his own and Sega invited him to work on like the remasters of Sonic
Sonic
1,
One,
Sonic
Two,
and
and
CD,
and then they
and
and
then
then they did
eventually
Sonic
made Mania.
Mania. But
Yeah,
what people don't realize though is Sega screwed Christian Whitehead out of royalties for those games.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, they invited him in, gave him some credit, and let him get a little bit of clout, but then they screwed him on the back end on the contract. So what do you want
hmm
Nintendo to do that? Because if that's what you're saying is acceptable, and Nintendo starts doing that, then you can't complain that they did it.
Yeah, and this is how this is like an idea I had in mind if I ever decided to make a YouTube video about it. But this was like long before like Frontiers and Sonic Superstars became a thing too. Especially when it's Sonic movies. Like I generally feel like Sonic Mania was literally Sega's greatest scapegoat,
Okay.
basically. Like, because they did that one good thing, you know, even though Nintendo also did a very similar thing with Cadence of Hyrule, you know, they did
Yeah.
it with an indie dev who made Crypt of the Necrodancer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like that was you could tell that Crypt of the Necrodancer themselves is so heavily Zelda inspired, right? For Nintendo to contact the creator of Crypt of the Necrodancer to make an official Zelda like game, with their characters, like I'm sure they're thrilled. I'm sure they're absolutely thrilled that Nintendo definitely has given that person a chance. But but
Yeah.
like Nintendo haters and Nintendo fans in general just don't seem to credit that. They don't
They
give it
don't acknowledge it.
that much credit. They don't acknowledge it. Yeah,
And
they don't acknowledge it too much.
the creator of that game wasn't screwed on potential royalties coming from additional sales of the game. So
Yeah.
again, you got to look at. I know we don't see everything that happens behind the scenes, but there are some things you can infer that line up and make sense, and then there's some things you can't infer that people will jump up and down about and say, "Oh yeah, I know this for a fact is happening."
Mm-hmm.
You don't.
Yeah.
I is everybody that views my YouTube channel and hears the things that I talk about and sees how the things that I talk about end up happening. How often do you
Yeah.
hear me say I know exactly what's going on behind closed doors in those board meetings, or when they're having meetings to set up for pitches for games? How many people have heard me say I know exactly what's happening? Tell me,
Hardly ever because you don't work for Nintendo. And if
I
you do
and I
work for
also
Nintendo, you'll be under NDA. You know.
and I also don't assume that my knowledge is or what I think is true. Now, and somebody who's probably there's going to be that one person that eventually shows up on my channel that's going to scour all my stuff and say, "Oh, you said this about Street Fighter 6." I know for a fact that Capcom has people who develop their games that follow me on social media. I know for a fact that a couple years before Street Fighter 6 was even announced, I made several different discussions talking about how World Tour mode should play a major part in the experience and that you should build a custom character and that character should be allowed to fight characters from the series. I also did a full on discussion with Jay about the same concept. Whereas I also added in a story that I thought would fit very well, that would tie up loose ends, and that would bring back a bunch of people's fan favorite characters in a respectable light. Now, the whole story aspect definitely got ignored. But if you play World Tour for Street Fighter 6, it is almost identical to how I described it.
The only
It's almost
thing,
identical.
the only thing that they kind of did squander though is the Street Fighter 3 representation. Like,
Yeah, oh yeah,
it's
they definitely
so
squandered it.
it's so baffling. This is the game that is so heavily inspired by Street Fighter 3, Third Strike in particular, and they don't even have a Street Fighter 3 rep at all in the game. It's like
Nope.
what they're they're already used up on all the Street Fighter 3 representation in Street Fighter 4 and 5 that they won't even bother doing it again. Like,
And this is supposed to be the game that follows the story being after Street Fighter 3, unlike 4 and 5.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
So yeah,
Like,
it is odd that that little bit got omitted, but that was where my focus was heavily pushed, was building upon the Street Fighter 3 part and the end of Street Fighter 2. So I mean, hey, I can say that it's a coincidence. They could say it's a coincidence. But I'm pretty sure somebody
yeah.
from their company saw my videos just because of how
Oh,
much fits with what I said. I don't know who.
speaking of speaking of coincidences, right? There's also there's been this trend with like Nintendo fans making the claim that oh, whenever there's a controversy going on, Nintendo always drops like a big major trailer of their upcoming games or whatever, just to or announce
Like
something
like
big,
it's all planned out.
like yeah, trying it's like all planned out just to keep the people happy or trying to dust it under the rug. Which honestly, this is my take on it. I think it is just a crazy coincidence. Nothing more, nothing less. I think it is just straight up a coincidence, not some kind of conspiracy theory that all these people are like they're being like the teacher from The Incredibles, you know. Coincidence? I think not.
I mean, it could definitely be planned out, but there's also the side of things that a lot of the stuff that they end up dropping takes months and months to plan out because they have to coordinate with all the people that they're partnered with, as well as set up stuff for the people that are working for them to be able to do these presentations and record. All this stuff is usually recorded months before we see it. Like, so
Yeah,
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 maybe
absolutely.
the timing lines up perfectly. Or hey, it could be that Nintendo has a bunch of stuff already ready to go, and then they see something happens and they just say, hey, drop a video real quick. Either one of those two things could be true, but at the same time, again, they usually have a lot of this stuff already planned out. That's why they can drop Nintendo Direct or a partner showcase and say, oh yeah, well, these games are also launching on the eShop this day.
Right. Yeah.
They couldn't do that if it wasn't already planned out.
Hmm.
So
And like you have more to say, Andre? I'm sorry.
no, I was just going to say so people can just chill back a little bit. I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying look at the fact that there's more going on. That's all I'm
Yeah,
saying.
absolutely. Not everything is, black and white and all that jazz. There's always a nuanced view on everything.
Mm-hmm.
And one last thing that I want to talk about when it comes to like Christian Whitehead and Sonic, right? And Sega.
Mm-hmm.
Like the fact that it was actually I think I heard from one of the developers from Sonic Team that they actually did officially confirm that Christian Whitehead really did want to make an actual sequel to Sonic Mania, but again, Sega screwed him over, so
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
Team
but
White Beard
Sega,
definitely wanted to do that.
yeah, and but Sega be like, fine, we'll make no, like, okay. Here's what I think about, like, Sega. It's like Sega would be like, they're trying to be like Bender, like they want to make their own Sonic Mania sequel with blackjack and hookers, but then uh when Sonic Superstars came out, while it's not a terrible game, it is half as good as Sonic Mania really is. You
Hmm.
know, like the problem with Sonic Mania is that the problem with Sonic Mania is that that the whole gimmicky stages thing that we were talking about with Battletoads and stuff,
Yeah,
right? It's almost the same applied to Sonic Mania for the most part. I think one of the most infamous aspects is like the bosses. At first, I kind of like low key defended them for the most part, with a few exceptions, obviously. Which I get to, like the final bosses per se, is that I kind of defend it because they kind of like feel more like challenging bosses in a sense, um, compared to like, Super Mario Wonder's bosses. But then I remember the whole reason people didn't like about the Sonic Superstars bosses is that they take too long, and Sonic is known to be a fast-paced action platformer. And
yeah.
to have
Everything
these,
feels slow.
yeah, the boss fights are slow as hell, and it completely like takes away the actual fast-paced nature of the Sonic series. And 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 again, when it gets to like the more later bosses, especially the final bosses in general, like the way how they're set up too, like, oh, once you hit them, they have a brief invincibility and stuff, which isn't which is not necessarily like that in other classic
It's
Sonic
never been
bosses, at
like
least.
that. It's
Yeah, it
never been
wasn't
like
like
that
that.
in any other Sonic game. The
Hmm.
But I could give you a legitimate reason as to why those bosses feel so out of place, and that's because a lot of the assets that are in Sonic Superstars are the remnants of Sonic 4 Episode 3 that never came out. That's why a lot of
You
the
know
stuff
what?
that's in there is the stuff that was going to be in Sonic 4. And Sonic, anybody remember Sonic 4, both Episode 1 and 2 feel slow in comparison to every other Sonic game.
Right.
So
Though what's funny
it makes
too
sense.
is that
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, I'm sorry. I was about to say like, but I feel like even then with the Sonic 4 bosses, they still feel more fast paced compared to like Superstars, to be honest. And I think part of it might have to do with the whole co-op, the co-op multiplayer thing that they have, which kind of failed miserably in my opinion, to be honest. Like even like when you're playing on the more powerful platforms, right? They still have like major bugs and issues and stuff. Like, man,
Well,
like
that
I've seen a stream of it too. Like when they were playing it on PC,
mm,
and there was just like it just had like frame rate issues left and right, and this wasn't even on the Switch. This was on the PC version,
well,
which is insane.
that's down to coding. That is down to coding. That is a major coding problem. And and I think I know what you mean with the multiplayer being tied into how the boss is being an issue, being basically being an issue because they didn't set the bosses up to have a level of scale to them. They basically if my theory is right, they basically set the bosses up to operate as if you have four people playing. So at that point, yeah, if you had four people playing, those bosses would feel fast. but they didn't scale it based on the number of players. They just created the bosses and set them up for potentially having 4 players. And that would definitely be irritating for a lot of people. So I can understand that. So because it's not like with games like with Streets of Rage or Final Fight or like a lot of beat 'em ups where if you have more people playing, they scale the enemies to the number of players. Like the enemies will either have more health or there will be more of them if there are more players available. And I can understand that on trying to incorporate that into Sonic, they probably didn't do a good job of it. They didn't scale the boss fights properly.
It also didn't help the fact that they hired like a very controversial dev team to work on it too. Arzes. They're very infamously known for making some either subpar like games like Yoshi's New Island, and
Mhm.
even more infamously Balan Wonderworld. You know, but I feel like in terms of Sonic Superstars, like it's definitely not as bad as Balan Wonderworld, thankfully.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's more like in the same ball plane as um say Yoshi's New Island and stuff like that. Which, funny enough, like RSS's best game, I would say, back when they were used to be called like Artoon or whatever. There were people who were former Blinks to Cat. I don't know Blinks to
Oh
Cat.
yeah.
Blinks to Time Sweeper. Blinks to Time the Time Sweeper. Um, it was Yoshi's Island on DS once upon a time,
Hmm.
and even then, it's still kind of like pales in comparison to the original Yoshi's Island. But yeah, like the fact that Sega just low key screwed over Christian Whitehead, out of a proper Sonic Mania sequel to probably make like brand new levels and stuff, you know, and they decided to just like yeah, apparently I think after what you said, Andre, about uh well, you said they might be taking assets from the canceled Sonic 4 Episode 3. I now kind of believe it in a sense because Sonic Superstars legitimately genuinely feels like the lost Sonic 4 Episode 3 in a sense more than sort
It
of the
was
Sonic
like
Mania
there's a
sequel.
guy that did a whole documentary on it. It was like 3. He did a general documentary on Sonic, and it was like 3 to 4 hours long. But I know it was somewhere in there. I gotta find that video because I'll send it to you. It makes sense when you look up how things lined up. So it does make sense.
Yeah, and funny enough too, like Sonic 4 in general isn't even a true Sonic 4 either, if you think about it, because like Sonic 4 was originally going to be called Sonic the Mobile. It was going to be a Sonic mobile game until Sega decided last minute um that oh let's make it Sonic 4 because we were so desperate to try to appeal to the classic fans, you know,
Mm.
and you can even see remnants of that in Sonic 4 Episode 1. Funny enough, too, I think in the casino zone, in Sonic 4 Episode 1, if you see like the Ferris wheel, right, it would actually say Sonic the Mobile. It would actually say Sonic the Mobile.
Because they forgot to take that out.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So yeah, Sonic 4 isn't even a true Sonic 4. You know,
Well, it was shoehorned. And who was the developer for that?
Dimps.
Oh
Oh
yeah,
man,
Dimps, because
Dimps is so tragic with Dimps because they used to be really good with
they were
Sonic games.
they were really good, but they did a horrible job with slowing Sonic down and then putting a bunch of speed boosters in the game.
Oh
And my
yeah.
thing is, if you needed Sonic to be faster, why not just make Sonic faster and remove half of the speed bumpers?
Yeah.
Like you would have, you would have had a game that felt better. People would have enjoyed it more. It wouldn't have got crapped on as much. Because I remember someone made a Dimps edition of the Sonic 2. They made a Dimps edition
Oh
of Sonic
god,
Sonic
yeah.
the Hedgehog and Sonic 2, where Sonic moves slower and there's a bunch of speed boosters everywhere. I was like, y'all ain't right. Y'all not right. Making fun of Dimps like that. Why are y'all treating Dimps like the whooping boy? But that's what they became. They
It's
became the whooping
sad
boy.
too. It's really sad because like, yeah, you say what you will, but like some of the aspects that they did with the earlier days of the handheld, like Sonic Advance and Sonic Rush. But here's the thing: Dims was the one that actually gave birth to the boost formula, starting with Sonic Rush.
Yeah.
S- which Sega decided to adapt it from that game into the 3D realm, starting with Unleash. You know, and it was amazing. You know, and yeah, and to see how Dimps went downhill from the DS era in general. Like, man, um,
I
though
think
my
honestly they
theory
just weren't prepared. They weren't prepared for scaling up. That was the problem.
that could be the reason. This is a similar thing that's going on with Game Freak, as of late with Pokemon, which is
I
a
can
whole
see it.
nother can of worms.
I could see
But
it.
however, it also might be because the fact that Dimps was also working on with Capcom with the more recent Street Fighter games like Street Fighter 4 and Street Fighter 5. So
Oh, that was oof.
yeah,
And their track record that makes more sense for 5. 4 wasn't so bad, but 5 it got better along the way, but it definitely had issues. It, it had a lot of
yeah,
issues. So
yeah,
when you say that now, I'm like, oh, that clicks.
mm,
That clicks very
yep,
well.
yep,
Oh man.
yep. It all adds up. It's the reason why, like, it seems like both franchises, both games, like suffered in the sense,
Oh yeah, they definitely
and
did. They
because
suffered
like the
along the
teams are so
way.
split up. And like but yeah, like the thing that gets me too with Sonic Superstars, right? Like going back to that one, is that they actually did use like the engine, like the Sonic Mania engine for the
Mhm.
physics of Superstars. And I could totally see that in a sense. Like it definitely feels like the more old classic Sonic games of yore, and by extension Mania.
Yeah.
But like again, like with everything else, it just feels like something was missing with the gameplay of Superstars to an extent. Like it just feels like I think what didn't help, like I said, is the level design of Superstars. Was it didn't help well with Superstars because, like I said before, like it's just the gimmicky aspects of Sonic Superstars, and
Well,
yeah,
Sonic has technically always had gimmicks. It's more like the execution of the gimmicks didn't work out well. Like
right,
they
right.
were just put there just to be put there, and they didn't do so great. Which understandable. That's kind of been Sonic's story over the last 15 to 20 years. A bunch of decent ideas that don't always have the greatest of execution.
Yeah, definitely fair enough too. Even Mania has some gimmicky aspects to it as well, you know,
Yeah,
and
but
it's
it
actually
was
a
far
good
better
example.
executed.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say like it's better executed there as well. So it's like I think this is what I'm trying to really get at as well is that it's just so frustrating that Sega seems to be fine with people and fans to like use their IP in fan games and fan content and whatever, but they don't take the opportunity to like straight up like make a game like Sonic Mania ever again, or at least get some of these fans to help chive in with Sonic Team to make a more higher quality Sonic game. You
Well,
know?
if things keep going the way they've been going, they'll eventually get around to it. But now that people know that they're very willing to leave you in the dust after using your work, they're going to be a little bit more cautious about it.
Yeah. And I don't think Sega themselves is gonna even oblige for the most part. Again, Sonic Mania. I mean, okay, there are some other decent examples like Tyson Hesk. Um, he did like Sonic fan comics and even parody comics of Sonic before,
Yeah.
but then now recently, like he's known to work on like with some of the animations for the Sonic shorts, and even was one of the lead character designers for the revamped designs of Sonic for the Sonic movie, and was the pioneer of the Sonic movie design going forward. You know, so there's that. You know,
Hmm.
but I feel like in general, when it comes to Nintendo side as well, like there are some genuine Nintendo fans who do get to be involved with Nintendo's work at one point in time. There's actually people who were once doing voices of certain characters from Nintendo franchises to like to do work for them. Like they actually made like these Nintendo parody videos once upon a time. Uh, I forgot some examples, but there are out there, you know.
Well, those are people who probably made a very big name for themselves in the fan community, but they also put in the time and effort to get into contact with someone in the company. So they put in work on both fronts, more than likely, which it seems a lot of people don't want to do. They just want to put in the work on one front and just assume that's how it should go, but that's not always how it works.
They they just want to say Nintendo bad and get clout, and that's it.
No,
They want to talk about how Nintendo is bad and you should feel bad, and that's about it.
I mean, yeah, because a lot of people do that. Shoot, I could do that right now. I could do a whole video talking about all the stuff that I perceive that Nintendo has done wrong, and it will more than likely get a lot of views. But
Possibly, yeah.
the moment I talk about the flip side of that, it will be ignored, and I know that because there'll be a
Yeah.
lot of people like, "Oh, nah, you went fanboy on this." Like, no, I'm talking about the discussion from multiple angles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's the thing, like we have our own criticisms towards the company. It doesn't have to be the same as everyone else, you know, and we don't perceive our criticism towards Nintendo the same way as everyone else do. We're not gonna be like throwing tantrums that to Nintendo all the damn time and shit, just because. And it's like again, I just like kind of like grow numb nowadays, and for the most part about all this stuff.
Well, I
Like
understand.
I personally, I just personally don't really care as much as I should, because it's like at the end of the day, you know, like for me, like if it weren't for the fact that Nintendo actually still makes like incredible games for the most part, I probably wouldn't even be supporting them at all, if anything. Like, if anything at this point, like Nintendo is like one of the, it's not it's one of the few, if not the only company that seems to be holding the gaming industry together like a thread, besides like the indie scene,
Hmm.
you know. So that's what my thoughts about the whole thing.
I mean, that's a fair criticism. Like a lot of and game companies themselves will tell you, like if Nintendo's around because they have a better business model, but we don't see anybody adopting that business model that actually supports growth and expansion, which makes no sense. But then when you look at it, these companies are being held to the fire by a bunch of investors that don't really know anything about the industry and don't really care about the industry. Hopefully, with time, that'll change. But
Mm-hmm.
with the investors not being interested in the actual subject and not interested in actual longevity and just being interested in quick profits, you're going to run into a lot of companies being pushed under the dirt and stepped upon because money has to be made, or budgets being blown out of proportion because more money has to be made. And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't do any good for the game companies, but it sure as hell lines the pockets of those investors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ugh. Oh man, we've been going for an hour and a half. Uh, so I think we go ahead and close this out because I didn't even realize the time, and I know I got a couple other things I got to get done. But
Oh, okay.
this was definitely definitely a random hop from subject to subject to subject. So gold
Yeah,
top,
yeah, yeah.
gold on
I
the top.
wish I wish I could have like gone for like more like the idea aspect of it, but I just have like a we kind of like did a sort of a repeat of some topics that you already addressed before, and to be honest, I do apologize for that. You
It
know.
happens. Look, it kept the conversation going. That's not a problem. And I'm going to do
Yeah.
more of these. So any more of them I do, you are very welcome to come in and we can just, you know, run through a bunch of different ideas. We started out on that train, but then we got sidetracked and we just went with the sidetrack. That's all.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But I guess I pretty much have said enough where I need to say it. There's definitely no reasons for a repeat and stuff.
Hmm.
Like, I will say, in terms of like my thoughts, like I think you did mention about like you did a stream about, is the gaming industry or gaming in general is in a rut, and I would say I do agree with you that gaming isn't not necessarily in a rut. And like I said before, it's mainly because of Nintendo, mostly Nintendo and the indie scene. They're the ones that are literally making the gaming scene just well more worth it. You
Hmm.
know, if it weren't for if it weren't for them, the gaming industry and the gaming scene in general would truly be a dystopian shambles and stuff.
Yeah. It'd be a process. It'd be a process to try to keep it going if there weren't for Nintendo and the indies that are prospering right now. It'd be far more of a mess.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And and I'm gonna say this too, Nintendo being stuck in their ways for the most part, it's not always necessarily a bad thing. I know it's weird for me to say, but you know, like considering the fact that we're getting like very quality games for the most part, especially nowadays during the Switch era,
Mm.
you know, I think it's safe to say that I think we're mostly in good hands. But anyways, I don't want to like drive this any longer than it needs to be. You know, I already said my piece about that. I definitely would I do have plenty more to say about certain personal aspects and stuff in terms of my gaming life, but we'll save that for next time.
Yeah, we can do that another time. So, folks, thank you for everybody that was watching. It seems that the majority of people were actually watching this on Twitter, so I know I'm going to get a lot of watchbacks on YouTube and stuff like that. But thank you guys for watching. Thanks for everybody that joined the chats. Hi, Sarah. Sorry that you popped in at the last minute, and but thank you for coming and stopping by. So
Yeah.
glad that everybody was here. And yes, the conversations will definitely be random. That's why I'm doing it this way, because I will talk off people's ears randomly, and we can have just like a genuine flow of a conversation that doesn't have a necessary deep premise it has to hold on to. That's why I got Game Idea Foundry Talk, because I do that there. But
Actually,
that will be coming back. That will be coming back because I got some
actually,
fun for that.
one more thing.
Mhm.
The I think like the next topic we may have next time is that I definitely have in mind wanted to tell is like my so-called struggles with like online multiplayer gaming and how you know how basically in terms of multiplayer gaming doesn't feel the same as it is back then when I used to play it. But again, like I said, we'll say that for next time. That will be like the next topic whenever we do meet together.
Yeah,
All
it'll be
right.
an interesting thing to go over. But that's gonna call it. We're gonna call it here, folks. Thank you everybody once again for joining in. Be sure to check out Winging It Podcast, 7 p.m. Eastern time on Sundays, because you know I'll definitely be there, and all of my randomness and weird thoughts will also follow. But
Yeah.
otherwise,
And thank you, Andre, for bringing me in again.
that's
Can't
no
wait
problem,
to
man.
get more to you.
No problem. Like I said, always welcome to come back. I can either be on here talking for an hour by myself, or I can be talking with somebody else. I'm good either way, because my mind
Yeah.
puts out a lot of stuff. So, but thank you everybody. Peace out, and everybody that is on the watch back. Hope you enjoyed it. Because
Peace out, everyone.
peace out, everybody.